a spooky but incredibly tasty riff on a po' boy sandwich? Today we are making the Edgar Allan Poe-Boy Sandwich from Code Romantic. In a post-apocalyptic world that's been taken over by the aware, you need to learn how to code in order to reprogram the AI that has taken over every single internet-connected device and is trying to kill humanity. That is the premise behind Code Romantic, a romantic visual novel created by my friend Miko of Pretty Smart Games. When I first started tossing around the idea of making food from indie games, I knew I wanted to make something from Code Romantic. After all, the whole point of this is to work with indie game studios and help promote their games while also getting to be really creative with food. And what better studio to work with than one owned by a good friend? I actually bought Code Romantic through one of those itch bundles for racial justice that was going around a few months ago. And this was the perfect opportunity to play through the entire game for research. Yeah, research. If you like romance, if you like stories, if you like sci-fi, or even if you just want to learn the concepts of programming, this is such a good game for you. And can I just say, Miko, that ending, Miko, jeez. So after talking to Miko, we decided that I should try making the Po' Sandwich, which comes from the Cup of Poe Cafe, which is part of the Literary Land amusement park that most of the game is set in. Her one suggestion for this was that it be spooky, and I can work with that. I decided to riff off of a recipe from Lady and Pups because, first of all, it looks delicious. And it's interesting enough to deserve the moniker of an Edgar Allan Poe-Boy Sandwich. We'll get to the spooky in a minute. We will start by making a tartar sauce. This sauce starts with a base of mayonnaise. We are using classic creamy Best Foods mayonnaise here. Then a hard-boiled egg, peeled and very finely chopped. This is one of quite a few ingredients that will really pump up the umami in this sauce and also will add to the creaminess as well. And then anise-scented Thai basil. We actually bought a bunch of this online and we are in the process of propagating it to try to grow more. I know we've talked about creating gardening videos and we've kind of been slacking a little bit, but we are filming the entire process of propagating and planting our Thai basil. And when that is done, there will be a link up here to the video of us getting more Thai basil. Hopefully there will be a ton of Thai basil in our future because while we're not really fans of black licorice, we are huge fans of this fragrant licoricey herb that is Thai basil. Next, we are adding the creepy to this po' boy sandwich. The original recipe called for anchovies, and if you're making this recipe at home, you can use that instead, or you can totally leave them out. That's up to you. But for me, this was the perfect place to substitute in a tablespoon of squid ink. You get the same fishy umami in the end, but it'll turn your sauce this spooky black color. Finally chop up about a tablespoon of pickled jalapeños for a mild and tangy spice. Then half a tablespoon of chopped capers. This will add even more umami to your sauce as well as a salty little pop. We also want the bite of some finely minced shallots. We're kind of touching on all the different flavor components in this dish. A little Dijon mustard rounds out the sauce by adding a faintly vinegary spice. The recipe calls for lime juice, but I had the opportunity to buy some finger limes. If you haven't seen them before, finger limes are just the coolest little creepy food. They're shaped like fingers, but if you break one open and squeeze it, all these little pearls of lime juice come out, and they look like little pink fish eggs. They are a delightfully tart little pop in your mouth, but they're not as strong as normal lime juice. I squeezed out the pearls and added them as is into the sauce. Those little pops of tartness as you eat it are a lot of fun. Lastly, a little freshly ground black pepper for that subtle earthy spice. Mix that all together really, really well. You'll see it go from a rainbow of colors to totally black. Stick that in the fridge while you prepare the rest of your ingredients so all of the flavors can meld. Now, we are on to the breading. Mandy's original recipe for the fried oysters is based off of Taiwanese-style fried foods, which use Taiwanese tapioca flour. It's a bit different from the tapioca flour that you find elsewhere in that there are some larger bits in it that add some crunch. So her recipe mimics that by using tapioca flour, fine cornmeal, and coarse cornmeal for that extra crunch. The combination results in a very light but crispy crust. Do not leave out that coarse cornmeal because those crunchy bits are so good. Then, for flavor, we add in salt, ground black pepper, and white pepper. The sharper black pepper and earthier white pepper both add to the complexity of flavor here. Whisk all of that together, and that's it for your breading. A couple more things to do before we fry. Put about half a cup of whole milk in a small bowl. Then finely mince about a couple of cloves of garlic and put those in another big bowl. We'll be using that after we fry. And now it's time for frying. Heat a couple of inches of oil. Canola or vegetable or peanut oil would all work great here, in a heavy-bottomed pot or a deep pan. I aimed for about 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can also tell if your oil is ready when you put a wooden chopstick or the handle of a wooden spoon in your oil and bubbles start to form around it. Instead of oysters, I decided to use shimeji mushrooms. They've got a cute little round shape that I figured would be perfect for this. Plus, there's always something a little creepy about mushrooms. And besides, I figured they might be more readily available in a post-apocalyptic world. For this recipe, we're going to cut off the caps, but if you'd like, you really can use the stems as well. We fried those up later, and they were really good too. Then, in small batches, dip the mushroom caps in the milk. Using a fork or a slotted spoon, take them out and let them drain a little bit, and then coat them in the breading. When you place them in the oil, they will spatter a good bit, but since I didn't have a problem with them sticking together, I found that I was able to add a bunch at a time and then immediately top it with a splatter screen so they wouldn't just pop everywhere. Cook them until the popping sounds subside and they're starting to turn golden brown. Using a slotted spoon, remove them from the oil and let them drain a little bit so they're nice and dry, and then add them to that bowl where you put the chopped garlic. Repeat this with the rest of your mushroom caps and the stems if you'd like. We cooked those up and we found that they have almost a more lobster sort of texture than the caps do. So those are really tasty as well. Once all of your mushrooms are cooked, now it's time to fry your Thai basil. Wash and thoroughly dry a big handful or so of Thai basil, and then add it all at once to your hot oil. These will pop like crazy, way more than the mushrooms did. We both got splattered with hot oil. Have your lid or your splatter screen ready to go and cover that immediately once you put the Thai basil in the pot. Make sure to keep an ear out because it won't be long before the popping and splattering of your Thai basil subsides entirely. And that's how you know it's time to take it out with a slotted spoon, Make sure it's fully drained so you're not adding any oil, and put that in the bowl where your mushrooms and your garlic are. Add a little salt, some ground white pepper, and some ground black pepper to the bowl to make sure everything is nice and well seasoned, and then toss it all together. Try not to snack on too many. I know you're getting your fingers in there, because now it is time to make your sandwich. You can make this with an Italian hero roll, or French bread, or ciabatta, or you can check out our sushi labs from last week and make your own New Orleans style French bread. We ended up going with the King Arthur recipe from that video for our sandwiches. And there's a link to the video up here or in the description. Lightly toast your bread if you'd like, we did not. And then slice it in half and remove some of the bread from the center of your rolls. This will give more room in the middle for your fillings and also will make it a less bready sandwich. Generously spread both halves of your roll with that squid ink tartar sauce that we made. And then fill it with as many of the fried mushrooms as will fit. You can serve your sandwich with more of that finger lime or lime juice and Tabasco sauce. And enjoy this messy, spooky, incredibly delicious sandwich. And if you like this, make sure to hit that sub button and click that little bell so you're notified every time we have a new recipe. And if you know someone who would love this spooky but oh so tasty sandwich, don't forget to share the love and send them a link to this video so they can check it out too. And now that we've made our spooky po' boy sandwich, it's time to eat. I know you're thinking, oh joy, it's time to try the po' boy.
It's tasting time, baby.
It's tasting time for this very spooky, very messy Poe, spelled like Edgar Allan Poe, po' boy. I love it. I love it so much. It's so funny. So this, yes. We mentioned before, this is from Code Romantic, which is our friend Miko's game that she launched earlier this year. And when I kind of put it out there saying, hey, I would love to be making food from indie games, because I know there are definitely people who do like the big games, World of Warcraft and, you know, all that stuff. But I wanted to focus on indie games, indie game companies to kind of get them out there a little bit more. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And when I put that out there, I really, really wanted to do something from her game. So we kind of collaborated on this.
How far into the game is it that you get to this portion?
It's close to the end.
Oh, close to the end, I see.
Yeah. I want to say the second or third to last chapter, because Code Romantic is a visual novel.
Yeah.
So if you like stories, you will enjoy this. But it also teaches you the coding concepts, which I think is a lot of fun. And that was definitely fun for me to go through since we're programmers. So it was like, I know this and I know this.
So should we go at it?
So this is from the Cup of Poe cafe that's in the story. And everything in there is Edgar Allan Poe themed. So she said, it's a po' boy, but make it spooky. And we just kind of had a picture to work off of, which I totally didn't pay attention to because I was more focused on making it spooky. But that's why we added the squid ink.
You sent me a screenshot of it. I can say that this looks a lot spookier than anything I've ever seen in my life when it comes to sandwich.
The black tartar sauce mayo, it looks spooky, it looks creepy, it's a little unappetizing looking.
And after you have taken a bite of it and start chewing at it,
take a bite
you will also look spooky too. This is so, I'm trying to talk him.
And we're back.
We're back.
Okay, it looks spooky, but this is such a good sandwich. We ended up going with the King Arthur bread from our bread labs last week, and I'm really happy with how the bread turned out. It is perfect for this. We removed some of the bread to make more room for the filling, but also to make it less bready. So that is really, it works really well. And then we've got the sauce.
Yes.
the creepy sauce.
One of my favorite parts. I think there's a lot
It's
of there's
good.
a lot to like
so
about
it
this.
It looks pretty gross.
Rich.
It's very, very rich. It's so flavorful, so full of umami. It's just so good.
Yes.
And you don't have to make it with squid ink. The original recipe used anchovies, but you could even leave those out if you're not a fan. But just all of the ingredients in there are so umami filled, and it's just so good.
Yeah, it's really rich.
Well, the original recipe used oysters. You'll see oysters, you'll see shrimp sometimes, like different seafood a lot of the times for po' boys. But we decided we wanted to go with mushrooms because mushrooms do feel a little bit creepier in some way, depending on how you think of it. They're also easier to get because we can't really easily get oysters right now. And I was also thinking in this sort of post-apocalyptic world of Code Romantic, they'd have an easier time of acquiring mushrooms than
foraging.
Something like oysters.
So speaking of the mushroom or things that you can replace this with, what kind of mushroom did you use? Because it's really good. I like the texture. It has a consistency of lobster, crab meat, or oyster.
So these are shimeji mushrooms. I was able to get these. I have a subscription to Imperfect Foods, and I was able to get these because they just happened to have them. So I was like, these look like a suitably creepy mushroom. And I liked that they were little balls, sort of. So they could fry up individually instead of like trying to cut up like a big portobello or something. So that's why I was really drawn to these. The way that they were fried and the coating, they really have the texture and the flavor of that garlicky salt and pepper lobster that you can get at like fancy Chinese restaurants. The second batch of these, just kind of for us on our own, I fried up all of the stems in the same way. I coated them and fried them up, but I was a little bit lazier about like temperature and stuff, and so they ended up a little soggier. But it actually mimics lobster better with the soggy ones instead of the really, really crispy ones. And oh my gosh, we were just like snacking. And the other thing that I wasn't really expecting, the finger limes. Eating the finger limes, the little poppy lime bits. Eating that with, okay, first of all, they're really fun.
Oh my God. No, I have to do this for science, Alison.
He has to
They need
suffer.
to know what it's like to just eat finger lambs by itself. It pops. I wanted them to hear the pops.
Adding lime juice to this, whether you can get finger limes or not, even just normal lime juice would be fine. And she also suggests eating it with Tabasco sauce. But adding that really cuts the richness because all of this together is very rich and very heavy, but then you add in the lime and it
completes the picture.
It's just perfect. And I really like that finger limes also just happen to be available this week.
I know.
Because they are so suitably creepy.
It is.
And I love it.
It works out.
I just got all the creepy things.
Yeah, all the creepy
And
things
it
on
makes me
one
really happy.
dish. But creepy, but delicious. So Alison, you were saying earlier that there's other things that you can replace for people at home. Instead of mushroom, they can use
typically oysters or shrimp would be normal for this.
Shrimpy, we got a special assignment for you. Come back, special recipe that you can make.
If you would like to buy Code Romantic, we will leave a link to their Steam page in the description below, and don't forget to sub. We have lots more tasty food, including more game food coming up. Like this video because it does help, and we will see you next time.
Alison, did you see the Shrimpy? I have a bed for him. Shrimpy! I have a bed!